Hi, good morning, everyone. Okay, so I actually have some submitted questions today that I want to talk through, and they're pretty common. And I guess the other thing I want to share is really good news. I've been working on my AI platform because how I think about AI is different. And so I'm building out my Phoenix Formula platform, and my first agent is almost ready. So I'm really, really excited about that. I think it's going to help my program scale and also be able to offer affordability to people and give them even more insights. So that's amazing. And I thank you to Innovair for helping me build it. Okay, so what was submitted today was to talk about ghosting. And so that might be enough of a topic to talk about. But this idea of ghosting, the idea that you submit applications and never hear anything. And I think we should just clarify this term. When I think about ghosting, I think about um, going on a date and never hearing back from them, even though you've been like messaging them and they don't want to tell you they don't want to see you again, or like you're messaging with someone back and forth on Tinder or whatever, and like they stop messaging you. Like that's ghosting, right? You're like in between something, there's some type of engagement and there's ghosting. So that's how I think about ghosting. Now, when you think about ghosting for the job search, I think so if we were to use the same analogy, that might be you've interviewed, but you've never heard back and you keep following up and you've never heard back. So there's been like an initial engagement and you've never heard back. And I think ghosting automatically makes us feel rejected. And I have some blogs about this. I can attach them, but like it's essentially thinking about like what that does to our stress response. And it also increases our scarcity feeling of when we are rejected. So there is this rejection piece we feel with ghosting, and it makes us feel really bad. Now, from what I'm hearing about people in the job market, there's not that many interviews happening. Like I was just talking to someone the other day, I think it was like 1,500 applications. This is like the highest I've heard. So like way to go on them in terms of effort. But we'll talk a little bit about ghosting and level of effort for total outcome. But essentially what this means is, and then they had about 10 interviews. I don't know what percentage of that is. Gosh, 0.0 something percent. And so that person might feel like, hey, I'm being ghosted a lot. Like I'm spending all this time on my resume. I'm keyword matching. I'm doing everything I can and I'm not hearing back. I don't think that's ghosting because there was never an initial thing, right? Like companies take applications and the good ones will say no. But even if they say no, they're not really giving you any information. So I feel like the no should just be kind of assumed unless you hear yes. So there's that for ghosting and how you think about ghosting. Because if you're thinking that you're going to submit an application, okay, I got to do this math because it's bothering me. So what is it? We just did 10 divided by 1,500. Point times 100 for percent, 0.66%. So not even 1% of applications in this instance are going for an interview. Some people have different results. Maybe it's 300, 400 applications, but that's still a lot of time. So when you think about ghosting, and this feeling of rejection, I think it's really important to disassociate the fact that you've applied online and now you're being ghosted and no one ever responded. I think that is the application process of today. You're not going to get feedback on your application and they're only going to reach out to the select few. And I've had different LinkedIn lives and videos on this, but essentially recruiters don't know what to trust in this application pool. So they are literally like, it's AI versus AI. So candidates are keyword matching to make them look like a perfect fit. And then recruiters are like, I don't know who's a perfect fit. Like I have 300 candidates that all look good. And so then they're like, I can't deal with this. And they're going and sourcing online. They're going on LinkedIn and looking at things to go find and research their own people. So like that's happening and they're trusting referrals a little bit more because there's just too much noise. So I think it's important to think about like this idea of ghosting. People feel like if you're submitting an application and you never hear back, you're being ghosted. But really, like it might not even be looked at. And so you really need to think about how you're processing this information, because if it's coming in as rejection, that's a problem. It's affecting your job search. So like if you apply online, I would say let's expect 1 to 2 to 3% would land in an interview. And I think a lot of people are thinking this is a numbers game. I just need to apply, work really, really hard, and then I will get interviews. And yeah, I think that could work. And I think the question is, how much is that going to wear you down? So when I was keyword matching, I did a little test. It was an hour per resume. And so let's say you apply to 300 jobs and you get 9 interviews. So 300 jobs, 9 is kind of high. Let's just say 4 or 5, whatever. 300 jobs. So you spent 300 hours and you got 4 interviews. And the question is, if you spent 400 hours, 300 or 400 hours networking, do you think you would have gotten more interviews? Right. And so in networking, where you're going to try and find people to talk to, you're going to assume a no response rate, right? You're going to assume that you're going to get 10 to 20% of people who are going to say, sure, I'm willing to meet with you. And the rest won't. And so I think we need to assume the same thing in our job search with ghosting, that like most of the time, you're never going to hear anything, and you're certainly not going to hear anything personal. And so think about your strategies and how it's affecting you, because that matters, right? If you then get an interview and you are feeling all this rejection and stress and scarcity, you're not going to perform well in that interview. And so you really need to think about what you're doing, whether it's providing the outputs and outcomes you want it to have, and how it's affecting your stress. Now, I do think there is a way out of this. I think it's networking and positioning. And so I'm talking a lot about that in my upcoming private podcast, where I'm going to break it all down. So definitely go to my website, look at private podcasts, sign up. But I hope this helped to talk about ghosting. Really think about your expectations. What do they say? Like satisfaction is the difference between, gosh, I'm blanking on this. Satisfaction is the difference between like expectations and reality. And so really think about that. Think about like reset your expectations into what you're doing. And that's also probably going to help you reconsider what you're doing. If that's a realistic expectation. So I would say like 1% on a conservative side would be good for interviews to applications. And so just like go with that in terms of your expectations. If you still want to like jump in and do just online applications and you like clicking submit, that's fine. And know that you might spend 100 hours doing that and get 1 interview. Maybe a little bit more depending, this is all depending, but setting your expectations is going to help you when you think about ghosting. Okay. I hope this was helpful, and keep submitting